Hi, everyone. Welcome to another one of our Career Catalyst sessions. I'm Annabelle Baldi from BioBuzz, and as some of you know, I've had the pleasure of hosting this series for over the past year and a half. And, in the new year, we've been working behind the scenes to kind of figure out how we evolve Career Catalyst by actually inviting the experts from our community to step into the hosting role. So we're focusing on several different tracks, each designed to help you go a little bit deeper into the specific career paths within life science. And today, I'm very excited to introduce Kayla Britt, who will be leading our commissioning, qualification, and validation, or CQV track, hosting sessions that explore how experience translates into real-world regulated environments and help those roles evolve across the industry. So today, Kayla is going to be presenting and sharing your skills reimagined, how existing experience fuels your next career move. And she's going to be setting the tone for kind of like what the track looks like in the coming months. And she's drawing upon her own kind of transition into CQV and her work in those highly regulated environments. A little bit about Kayla. So she's a published scientist, a former cell and gene therapy validation engineer at Kite, and she's now working as a AI validation specialist. So we're very excited to have her. She has her own consulting business, Britt Biocomputing. So definitely check that out. And like I said, really looking forward to this session. Before we do get started, I do want to give a thank you to our sponsors for today's session. So we have Workforce Genetics and BioTrack. Workforce Genetics has been helping connect talent with high-performing teams for over 20 years. So definitely check them out at workforcegenetics.com. And also want to give a big thank you to BioTrack for sponsoring today's session. They have hands-on workshops that have trained over 17,000 scientists. If you're looking for upskilling, again, really, really great resource. Cannot recommend them enough. Go check them out at biotrack.com. And also want to mention that today's session is part of the BioBuzz Talent Lab. So join the beta testing of that. It's your one-stop shop for career growth, job opportunities, and industry connections. We're continuing to kind of add some updates to the Talent Lab, and that's the best way to kind of stay in the know about events and things like this and get on our email subscribing list. So again, definitely check that out. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kayla to let her introduce herself and get us started.
Thank you, Annabelle, for the lovely intro. As Annabelle said, I'm Kayla. I will be your CQV, so Commissioning, Qualification, and Validation track host for this Career Catalyst series this year. I'm very excited to have some great conversations with various guests each month throughout the rest of the year. Definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you to BioBuzz for having me for this opportunity. And definitely check out the other track hosts as well. We've got Jake for emerging trends, Crystal for career, and Paris for biomanufacturing. So definitely across those 4 tracks, we've got a great variety of content. So definitely check those out. All right, so today I'm presenting on your skills reimagined. This session is intended to help you find clarity in your skill set, enhance the way you communicate your skills to the outside world, and how, if needed, you can repurpose your skills to fit your career direction. Alrighty. So I've broken this down into 3 kind of chunks. The first part will be about owning your narrative, so a bit of a skill inventory, taking stock of what are your strengths. Part 2 will be a little bit more into how you can communicate your skills to showcase your value to hiring managers, future organizations. And then part 3 is a bit more of a practical skill workshop. So if anyone has, a resume up or, skills that they know they want to, sort of work on how to reimagine or reinvent, that would be great. So we're going to be doing that later in the session. So a little bit about me before we get into the session. I went to undergrad at Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania, and I always wanted to attend kind of a smaller school where I could have more interaction with my professors and more of a small group kind of environment. So I was very lucky to be able to do that there. And there I kind of got my first foray into research. After my freshman year, I did an REU in Cincinnati, sensory ecology research. And then I kind of fell in love with research at that point and just kept going with it. At school, I did a project on communication in a tree frog species, and that was very cool. We were able to get that published in 2022. So that's a little image or picture of the tree frog on the cover there. And we basically found that there was a whole new mode of communication that we had never, really looked into before. Tree frogs communicating not only through acoustics, but also through their tremors, so through their actual movement of their bodies. That was super cool. And then after undergrad, I went into CQB roles, and I initially started as an equipment validation specialist. And at Kite, I was able to be fortunate enough to take the GAMP training, which is the good automated manufacturing practice. So there I got my first foray into computerized system validation and assurance. That was a great experience there. So part one, we're going to talk about owning your story. So this is super important because you are the expert of your own story, right? No one else has your unique combination of education, experiences, and perspective. So it's really important to own that and recognize the value that you bring. So I think it's very important to be clear on your career narrative and be clear on your skills so you can communicate it to future organizations and to hiring managers. And one way to do this is by getting feedback, right? So both peer and non-peer, like we may often think about feedback in terms of a performance review or one-on-one with your supervisor, but you can also get feedback from friends and family, right? And sometimes they have insights into soft skills that you may not have realized that you can lean into. For example, I found that I'm always the one, maybe some of you have this experience too, where your family asks, oh, can you explain this latest like biotech thing to me, and of course, none of us, know everything about all biotech things, but I try to, explain things, where I can to my grandparents or aunts and uncles. And that's a skill, right? It's science communication. So sometimes there are things that you may initially overlook, and being able to take a complex technical data or technical information and explain it to, a person who doesn't have a science background, that's, a very valuable skill in the biotech in our industry. So once you determine what your skills are, you can determine whether these skills are aligned with where you want to go in your career. And if not, maybe you have skills that are adjacent that you could kind of use as a bridge to get to where you want to go to master those the skills for your future career. So this is a quick reflection prompt. I'm going to open it up, open the floor to everyone. So if you were asked right now by a hiring manager, what are your top 3 skills? Would you use the vocabulary of your current job or the vocabulary of the job you want to have that you see yourself in the future? So you don't have to answer, if you don't want to, but just something to think about, right? Okay. And then part 2, we've got the future of skill transfer. So this is going to go into a little more about skill communication and how to discuss your skills with the outside world. So this is a question. Do your current top skills match your dream job? And is there a skill gap between where you are and where you want to be? And then another question, is it a knowledge gap or just a vocabulary gap? So it may be that, you actually do have the skills or close to the skills that you need for your dream job, but it's just about the way you phrase it or the way you communicate it, or can you find examples from your job history that showcase those skills?
You want to answer?
Oh, yes, please. I'd love, anyone open up.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sometimes your dream job is predicated on, you may have the skills, and sometimes it helps to have a good network where you can and get accepted into your dream job. That's part A. part B, like I have a lab business, so I'm finding that I could accelerate myself into a better biochemical job, but it's dependent on me raising more money for the company. So it's like sometimes it's a lot of more than one thing you have to do to get your dream job.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. This presentation is skill focused, but absolutely, that is a very good point that it is more than just skills that you need to, get to where you want to go in your career. So that's
And
definitely
skills are important. I'm glad you brought that up. You have to watch constantly change and update your skills. I agree with that. But then there's like skills like sitting on some other things, like a money scaffold, and your network.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for making that point. It's an excellent thing to bring up.
Yeah, awesome point. Yeah, if you guys have anything else, feel free to drop them in the chat as we kind of continue too.
Okay. Yes, I definitely want this to be interactive as much as possible. So please feel free to shout something out in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. Thank you.
And as we were just discussing, yes, oftentimes there are, contextual constraints or things to take under consideration, right? So, what does your time look like? Do you have the bandwidth to, do what you need to do to close the skill gap? Energy, your current role, and this is often something both to consider as a constraint, but also something you can utilize, right? Oftentimes, within your organization, you may be able to do a coffee chat with someone from a different department to learn more about their role. Learn, is this something I, really want to do? And sometimes this can be really helpful because you may, look at someone else's job and think, oh, this is, what I want to do. But once you actually talk to that person and talk about their day to day or shadow them, you realize, oh, this isn't quite what I thought. Or you might realize, oh, this is exactly what I thought. So definitely getting the practical experience can be really helpful. And then also considering a market filter, right? So, even if you have the best skills in the world for something, if the market, isn't really looking for those skills, then you might have a tough time. So just something else to consider. And then with your current role as well, looking at, what are the needs of your organization? Does your organization have a need for, a certain role and you can grow into? Maybe you can talk to your boss or supervisor about that, about, if there is an organizational need, being able to kind of help you get into that role that both your organization and you both see as a priority. Then a quick reflection prompt. Feel free to throw something out into the chat or unmute yourself. So maybe you can think through right now which investment is best for your skill gap. Do you have any insights? Are you deciding between maybe 2 or 3 of these and, just talk through it or anything you have. So for each potential role in industry, it can be something different, right? Example, job shadowing. Sometimes we might assume we need a full degree, right? We need a full master's degree, or we need a new bachelor's degree or certificate. But it may just be you need portfolio or job shadowing, right? And a portfolio is a much more autonomous thing that you can take on, alongside your current role, as opposed to having to, abandon, your job and go back to school, So it's good to think through this. This is a little bit about me for how I have seen, I've translated my skills throughout my career. So for one example, scientific inquiry, that translated a lot to, I feel, experimental design, and I was an equipment validation engineer, but understanding the process was very helpful for what I did. Oh, sorry, go back. Thank you, Miriam, for putting that in the chat. So portfolio often refers to, like, for example, for like a data analyst, they might have a portfolio of personal projects that they've worked on that they can show a future a future supervisor or organization. That's the context I can think of it in. Maybe also like a graphic designer, for example, might have something similar. I don't know that for CQB specifically, it's the most applicable, but I know there's a wide range of.
As a scientific writer, for example, you can also have a portfolio.
Absolutely. So that's a good one.
Yeah, that's something that could be related also. Yeah.
That's a way you could demonstrate your skills and show, what you can do without having to, get another degree or even a certificate. So something definitely to look into and take advantage of if that's relevant to your career path. And then here, looking into a little bit, this is an example for you all to think about your own career path. So this is kind of how I've used some of my skills to translate to future roles, right? So scientific inquiry, that was kind of where I first started out, learning the scientific method, learning how to set up my own research projects, and that translated well to like things like root cause analysis, regulatory compliance, learning how to adhere to a standard and to a process. I think that's something that translates through to various roles, and for me to CQB, and then now to being an AI validation engineer, right? So while there's definitely new components I've had to gain to go into each new role, there has been like a basis of skills that I've been able to translate over, and I think without that it would have been much more difficult. So definitely think about the skills that you have and maybe look at this and think about, for your own example, how this could be applied. Okay, and now we've got, last but not least, a practical skill workshop. Does anyone have anything on their resume right now? And then we can all help to make suggestions for how we can better tailor it to your strategic direction or where you want to ultimately go in your career. Does anyone have any examples of anything or any skill that they have that they kind of want to talk through or repurpose? Communication, thanks, Annabelle. Okay.
Yeah, so I think speaking to communication in the way of a lot of people at times, they might list it in their special skills section. How would you suggest, I guess, they show that in like a bulleted format on their resume that shows like actively how it kind of situationally maybe is the better word, how they can kind of showcase that?
Absolutely. So I think one question I sometimes ask myself is, okay, you have the skill, like, so what, right? So not just what skill do you have, but what have you done with it? So do you have an example of where your communication skills made a difference or was able to, resolve a critical issue that you had or resolve, a stakeholder disagreement? And when you can show those specific examples of how you've been able to use your skills to, help the organization, I think that's something that hiring managers and future organizations really look at and value heavily. So I definitely recommend maybe asking yourself that question, like, so what? So what is this? How does this add value? Basically, is the kind of question that I would ask. So thank you, Annabelle. Do you have any other ones? I can go back to my screen. Let's see. So for example, for me, there's bias detection, right? Which sounds like a very technical thing, but when you think about what it actually does, you know, for the clients that I help, it helps them ensure that their AI, for example, if for a clinical AI that's you know, looking at how to classify patients for a clinical trial, bias detection helps to ensure that each patient is, you know, being treated the same way, that there's, you know, no you know, like, I guess, bias in terms of how each patient is being handled. So, you know, each group, like men and women, you know, each group within that trial has the same chance at being properly assessed through this AI. So that's another example. Troubleshooting, that's a good one. Okay. So when's the time that you were able to troubleshoot something that made a big difference or brought a lot of value for either a project you were working on or the organization you were in? So do you, Alexandra, do you have an example of a time you troubleshooted something that you felt made a difference? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I brought it up, so sure. Well, one clear example that I have is actually more of validation. And so, for example, I worked in an academic center in a lab where they outsourced an assay, and it would take literally 3 to 4 months to get back the results because they sent it to Johns Hopkins. And then what I did is I managed to perform the assay in-house and brought results in 28 days to get assay results and validated it to get comparable results. I used the same samples, clinical samples, and then demonstrated that it could be performed in-house, and then therefore saved a lot of time and probably money. So that's a troubleshooting. I don't know. So that's assay validation, but really it was taking the initiative to say, you know, we could do better.
Absolutely. Definitely.
But I don't know how else to say that in terms of, like, besides troubleshooting, you know, but, you know, always trying to look things of how to perform things in a different way.
Absolutely. I think well, you described it very well. I think one possible term you could use is like continuous improvement, right? So you were able to find a method to allow your organization to engage in continuous improvement. And if you can, I would try to quantify those savings, right? Those time and money savings. Maybe you can't, you know, get an exact value, but you said you saved what, like, you know, 4 months or something like that. I mean, you can quantify that, right? You can put, you know, I was able to, you know, shorten this timeline for us getting these results by X amount of time. And that's, you know, something as future hiring managers, I was like, okay, wow, you know, you're able to, you know, so is that helpful? Or you can talk to more. If anyone else has any suggestions, feel free. That was a great one. Okay, my resume, self-starter, prioritization. Self-starter, that is actually also relevant to Alexandra's example about how she, so let's see, self-starter. So again, I would try to find a specific example, right? A time when you, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking, that sounds very relevant to the last one. Okay.
I have one more question for you, Kayla. What about critical thinking? How would you showcase that?
Critical thinking. I have one of my previous critical thinking here. Okay. So for me, results oriented, yes. So for me with critical thinking, I translated that heavily to problem solving in CQB. So essentially how, if you are dealing with something unexpected, how you're able to, you know, think through the process to be able to get yourself to the right result, right? So root cause analysis, can you correctly identify the actual cause of the problem that you're seeing. So for example, for me, one time when I was initially in CQB, I was doing a summer warehouse mapping, and we had I think something like 50 data loggers kind of spread throughout this warehouse, right? And set it up for 7 days, took them down, and all but one looked great. And so and it was getting really wacky results, like things that wouldn't have been possible in a summer, warehouse. And so I ended up thinking through it. Like, okay, is this just, the heat? Is the heat causing it to, malfunction? And that's like kind of putting pressure on the electronics, or, is it just like generally reading wrong everywhere? So I tested that by putting a data logger in room temperature in the lab, and then running that for a few hours and seeing how that read. And that was normal, right? So then I was able to say, okay, I can send this to the company that the data loggers are owned by, and say, okay, I noticed, when it was in the warehouse, summer warehouse mapping for this amount of time was reading these values, but then it was in the lab and in room temperature, it was normal. So that's good data, right, to have to understand what's possibly going on the inside with the hardware. So yeah, that's a little bit of an example.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think Crystal has something in the chat.
Well, thank you, Crystal. Results oriented. I guess that's tough, right? I think we all have preferences for the kind of like verbiage or words that we prefer, right? So it's I don't think there's really an objectively like wrong or right most of the time with that. But let's see, results oriented. I guess again, I would try to get as specific as possible. So maybe thinking of like what exactly and what ways do you demonstrate this value? So I guess, do you have any examples of ways you feel like this like comes up in your work, or ways?
Sorry, did you ask me if I had examples?
Yes, any like ways you feel like
I was in mid-chew.
You're totally fine. It is lunchtime.
Yeah, I think his point was like, yeah, you're results oriented. Tell me how. And he's like, if I see that for the umpteenth time, it's like, it's assumed that you're results oriented. So tell me how you do that. And I think he was getting, but you still want to summarize it, right? Like, yes, I can quantify it. I can put dollars, number of people I've impacted, but I still want to kind of summarize that in my like objective statement or something like that. And so I was just curious if you or anyone had some ideas of how to still put that in a summary type of way.
Thank you, Michelle. That's a good one. So mirroring the language of the job description. Results oriented. I'm having a tough time thinking of clear. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give you a tough one. I was just
No. Oh, Annabelle's got a good one. Data tracking for continuous improvement and metrics. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So showing a method through which you accomplish this, focused on meeting objectives. Yeah, those are all really good ones. You could add even a little bit more, right? Focused on meeting clear objectives, based on the priorities of the organization or something, so there are different ways you can dress it up.
This is good stuff. Thanks all. Thank you, Kayla.
Yeah, thank you all. definitely a team effort here. A scientific background, biochem and genetics, so I mostly have experience in technical. Thank you, Alexandra. It's another good one.
I think phone a friend for this one. I know Angela is on the call, who's a BioBuzz ambassador, and she's actually an awesome science communicator. Angela, if you're still kind of actively listening.
I saw that saw that question. I would say try to tailor a little bit of what Kayla was saying, like try to tailor what you have, both in your CV and your resume, in your LinkedIn, sorry. Use it as results, as for example, like publications or conference presentations you've done specifically as results. Try to like transfer that academic basically translate the academic language into more technical language, focus on science communication. One thing I love to do is I take like 10 job offers, I put them into ChatGPT, and I'm like, tell me the technical, like the soft skills and the technical skills you need for this type of role. And that gives you a lot of the jargon that people uses generally on these types of roles. And it helps you kind of tailor your resume and your LinkedIn for this. But I've done a lot of resumes in my life. And that way you can kind of like basically embrace that you want to be already as something that you are, and use all the things that you have to back it up already. Like, don't think that you don't have anything just because you've done certain things. Working in a lab and having a scientific background usually means that you get to write papers, you get to write reports, you get to write, and you're already a science communicator if you know how to do it. Do like a brand. One of the biggest things is basically your personal brand, and maybe start using like LinkedIn as a way of like tailoring how other people see you, and start doing scientific communication or science communication through social media. It's another thing too that can help basically recruiters come to you. I don't know if that was helpful.
Thank you, Angela. That was wonderful. That was good when we have resources right here. We can connect. I'd also recommend. What's I going to say? Back to the portfolio. Again, if you are able to put together, in any free time you have, a few scientific communication articles that are geared towards the kind of roles that you want, and be able to showcase to recruiters, that could be another beneficial thing. Stuff. Davis, biochem, neuroscience, expertise. Awesome. That's some great stuff here. Any other ones, feel free to unmute or throw anything in the chat.
Also want to open the floor too at this point, because I know we have about 10 minutes left for any questions you guys have. Oh, no worries. For any questions you guys have for Kayla, just generally around kind of her area of expertise, the topic, things like that. So feel free to throw those in too.
Yes, John.
Hey, thank you. So you offer job placement services too?
Well, not me personally, but through BioBuzz. Maybe Annabelle can speak a little bit more about this.
Okay.
Yeah, John, I know you've joined a lot of these career catalyst sessions, but yeah, always kind of engaging with BioBuzz events. I don't know if you've ever been to our in-person events and things like that, but awesome resources for kind of connecting and networking and things like that.
Thank you.
I think there's going to be some kind of portal for job matching through BioBuzz that's coming in coming weeks, but it, yeah.
Yeah, we continue to kind of make updates to the beta testing of the platform of the talent lab. But yeah, no, John, I know you're in there just from past sessions and things like that. But yeah, another awesome resource to kind of keep up to date with all the things we're doing.
Angela is saying she has a coaching service for resume review and tailoring. So that's another great resource for anyone who is actively job searching.
Yeah, I worked for 3 years as a coach, basically helping people transition from academia to industry. So I have a lot of experience doing CVs and resumes for other people. If anybody needs any help, they can reach me out too.
Thanks, Angela.
Awesome. All right, Kayla, I think I have a question for you. So you touched on it a little bit, but if someone wants to kind of pivot, particularly into CQV within maybe the next 6 to 12 months, what are kind of the very first and like foremost steps that you would recommend they kind of take that's a little bit more concrete for them to get into that? What's the number one, I guess?
I think it's very important to have like if you're already working in a regulated environment, I think that's it's less of a jump, I would say. If you aren't, I would try to find some kind of GMP training and just to get through the basics of how to work in a clean room, GDP, GMP, just more generally. I think that's really important for CQV. I would say if you're in a organization that has a CQV department, I would talk to them. I would say, hey, can I maybe shadow you when you go to do a temperature mapping or something that is like lower stress, so they can have someone come along and watch. I think that's a good step to take. Yeah, I think those are probably the two top things I'd recommend.
Awesome. That's great.
And there are, I think, various upskilling services for CQV. I've never personally utilized any of those, so I don't know how helpful they are, but that is an option. Oh, John?
Yeah, thank you. So you were just mentioning places to improve your skills. So I was a pharmacist previously, and then I got a recent degree in stem cell regenerative medicine. But I don't have the background. Oh, thanks. I don't have the background like other people do. Are there other things you recommend, like certificates and things like that? And where would you recommend getting them from?
I'm sorry. Did you say you're looking into CQV specifically, or
more lab to get more lab experience or stuff like that?
Oh, okay. So lab experience in general, I would recommend going to university or that's close to you, and just talking to professors, sending out emails, looking through the professor's email list and sending out emails, because they're always looking for students to volunteer in their labs. Typically it's not paid, unfortunately, but if you're looking for experience, that's definitely a great way to get it. And definitely just volume, right? Sending out as many as you can to find someone who has an opening in their lab, I think is a good idea. Certificate wise, I think for lab work, I think the practical experience is really helpful, really important. So I'm not sure I'd recommend a certificate right away, depending on what it is that you want to do in the lab. But that's my advice personally. I don't consider myself a career expert per se. I'm more an expert in my own career, but hopefully that's helpful.